What is up, Formula One fans? My name is Chris.
And my name is James.
And we are the Formula One Bros.
Just two twins with a love of F1 to share our thoughts on everything in the world of Formula One.
And welcome back. It is officially season 3 of our podcast.
Woohoo!
And we are just a few short months away from the 2024 F1 season.
Yeah.
But before we get to that, we are on the heels. The dust is settled on a great 2023 campaign that was completely and utterly dominated by Max Verstappen and Red Bull.
Yep, Max Verstappen, Sergio Perez got a couple wins in there at street circuits, but yeah, Max Verstappen breaks the record for most wins in a single season. It's just an incredibly dominating performance by him and by Red Bull. I knew going into the season that it was Red Bull was the heavy favorites, but I did not see. I could not have seen how Red Bull performed throughout the season at the beginning of the season. I did not think that was going to happen.
Yeah, it was incredible. It was very reminiscent of like 2002, 2004 Ferrari.
Yeah.
98, 99 McLaren, that type of thing.
2020 Mercedes.
So overall, overall, it was a great season. I tell you what, if you take Max Verstappen out, the battle for second place in both the drivers and the constructors championship was incredible.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it was Red Bull the heavy favorites, and now we are on to 2024. So just looking out like way super far ahead, do you think that the 2024 season is going to be closer? Is it going to be just more Red Bull dominance? Where do we go from here? Because Red Bull put together the most dominant campaign that they probably could have, with the exception of Singapore.
Yeah.
Where do we go from here? What happens?
So I think I truly don't see Red Bull's form going anywhere. I really don't see their form going anywhere. I think it's going to be another dominated season by Red Bull. However, I think the gap from Max and Red Bull to second place is going to be a little bit closer. You know, we look at Mercedes and Ferrari. Mercedes have made have said that they're going to make some drastic changes to the car. Ferrari have already said that they're going to make drastic changes to the car. And pre like dyno testing for Ferrari that has suggested that the car is going to be a second faster. And they fixed like the tire wear issue in the off season. Mercedes have said that they've made some good progress on their car and the problems that they were facing. And look at how McLaren ended the season on the incredible form that they ended on. I have a feeling that will continue for them as well. So I definitely think Red Bull will continue their dominance, but I really do think that the gap from second to first will be a little bit closer, and I think we could. I don't think. I still think Max will win, but I think whoever comes in second, it'll be a lot closer, and it'll come down to potentially even the last race.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And I think, you've had Fred Vasseur say that 95% of the car is different.
Yeah.
You've had Toto Wolff and the guys at Mercedes saying that, they did, because of cost cap regulations, and they would have completely changed over the monocoque had the cost cap not been into effect, but because they had a lot of time to take a look at it and develop it and see what's going to work. They could, and Toto Wolff even said in the middle of the season, if there was no cost cap, we just turn up to a race with a B spec car, and they're not able to do that, so they put a lot more time and development into it. I think Aston Martin have figured out what went wrong, or at least they have an idea of what went wrong last season.
Their season kind of...
Yeah, and where their development program definitely took a dip in the middle of the season. I think they realized what went wrong and what development pieces, I think they just went in the wrong direction, and I think they figured that out. So it'll definitely be interesting. I have a lot more to talk about McLaren, but we'll get to them in a second.
Yeah.
So I even think that it might be, a first through third or first through fourth situation that we could have.
Yeah.
I don't think that Alpine are in a place to compete with that top class of Formula One.
No, I don't think so.
So I really think, and depending on how the offseason goes for Aston Martin, I think the main contenders are going to be Ferrari, McLaren, and Mercedes.
Mm-hmm.
And of those three teams, do you think that there's one more favored than the other to challenge Red Bull?
I will say it's tough. I always want to. I mean, you can't bet against the big three. Mm-hmm. That's in that, which one being Red Bull, but the other two, Ferrari and Mercedes. You can't bet against them. And that was the top three: Red Bull, Mercedes, Ferrari, and the constructors. I think both Ferrari and Mercedes will be able to put a lot better of a challenge together against Red Bull this year, having made huge significant strides in the offseason and like with drastic changes for their car. But I mean, you never count out McLaren. Look at how their season started, how abysmal it was, and like everyone was like ready to jump ship and jump off a cliff with that. And then look where they ended. They ended up with several podiums, and Oscar Piastri won a sprint race. So
and towards the end, they were fighting for poles.
Yeah, they were right in the mix for pole position. So I think right now, from what I've seen, I think Ferrari and Mercedes will put together a better challenge than, say, McLaren. But McLaren's if they're going to be behind, if McLaren's going to be behind the two, it's going to be like right on their heels.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so it's tough to say.
And that's the perfect segue because they're the team whose car we've seen first.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't seen the car.
Yes.
They're launching on February 14th.
Yes.
The actual what their car is going to look like,
Mm-hmm.
but we've seen their livery. They're the first team to really, in my opinion, get the 2024 season underway.
Yeah.
And I'll get on. I have a lot to say about McLaren in a little bit, but first, I mean, let's talk about the livery, really, because that's the only thing that we have to talk about right now.
Yeah.
Is McLaren's livery. So what's your verdict?
I freaking love it, dude. I love it. I love it. I'm so glad. There are a couple things that look different about it. One, they got rid of the blue. Mm-hmm. I think had the blue been the darker blue that we had seen on that car in like 2018, 2019, 2020, even 2021. Had it been that darker blue, I'd be okay with it. But the ugly, ugly Carolina blue that they like the light sky blue that they had on that car last year, it was awful.
I wasn't a fan.
So they got rid of the blue. The black and orange is so sleek. It's just such a good color combination to begin with. Black and orange it's so sleek. And I will say the other thing with the sponsorship stickers and tags on the car, it looks a lot more cohesive. Mm-hmm. It doesn't really look like they just like threw sponsors on the car because they had to. It doesn't look very gimmicky. Mm-hmm. It looks a lot more cohesive and honestly a lot more professional.
Yeah,
it looks less like a toy.
Yeah, it's much more subtle. Like last year's car kind of reminded me of like the 2019 Ferrari where it was just a red car. I mean, of course, it's always a red car, but it was a red car with just like stickers everywhere, and that's kind of how the sponsorship made me feel, but it just, everything feels a lot more integrated and it's not as boxy and clunky. And yeah, I agree with the blue. Getting rid of the blue was really nice because like McLaren's identity, like the thing that they're going for and have been going for ever since really 2018, a little bit in 2017, but really 2018 is like that papaya orange.
Yeah.
And I think the blue was just kind of random. Like, I mean, they had the blue throughout, like from 2018 to 2022. But that really light blue, it wasn't really associated with McLaren. You don't think of McLaren when you see that type of blue. And I just didn't, I didn't get it. I don't think it looked good. And they've gotten rid of that. There's more orange. The black looks really good. And I think something that I think is getting a little bit of hate on the internet right now, but I actually really enjoy, is the chrome numbers on the front.
I think those are sweet.
Those look so good.
And it also pays homage to, I think, the best McLaren livery ever, which is the Chrome Vodafone.
Honestly, and I
livery.
think I think one of the best
That's
liveries
one of the best
in Formula One ever.
Yeah.
I mean, when you think of
that
like,
livery is just so iconic.
when you think of like the iconic Formula One liveries, you think of the Dayglow McLaren of the 80s. You think of the Chrome McLaren. You think of the silver Mercedes.
Or the any of the red Ferraris.
Ferraris being red. I think when you think of those, some of the most iconic liveries, it's one of those. And I love the chrome touch on that. And I think I still think that is my favorite livery of Formula One ever from all time.
Yeah. And you know what? Some people will think the black, because the black, I can guarantee you, will just be exposed carbon fiber.
Probably.
Like a lot of the teams were doing last year. But you know what? I don't hate that.
I don't hate it when it's done well.
When it's done well, I don't hate it. Ferrari last year with the random patch on the side.
Well, and then Williams in 2022 that was just like exposing random patches of carbon fiber to lighten up the car, and it actually looks good. Like the Alfa Romeo livery last year. The red and black, that looked like a good livery, whether it was black paint or exposed carbon fiber or whatever, it looked good.
It looks good.
The Mercedes being almost entirely all carbon fiber, that was good because they had a black car. I think it's really cool looking when it's done well. Ferrari did not do it well last year. A lot of teams did not do it well, but this year McLaren is doing it well.
Yeah, for sure. The other thing, though, we have seen is Alpine have been teasing us with some images of their front wing. It looks like it's their front wing.
They got some rear wing pictures as well.
And it's the pink camouflage. What are your thoughts on the pink camouflage?
I don't know.
I have my own thoughts.
I don't know. I just think camouflage as a pattern is not like, I don't know. I'm not a camo guy. Like, unless you're going hunting.
Yeah,
I don't see the purpose unless you're going hunting or you're in the military.
Yeah,
camo just doesn't do it for me, and so I think I will always tell you that I love their Pink Panther liveries. I love them. They're great. I'm glad that they don't do them all season, but I love them. If they're doing. So I think if they're doing an all-pink camouflage car, I think that could be cool. I think it could be cool.
I don't think so, but
if they're doing pink camouflage with the Alpine blue, I think that's going to just be tragic.
Yeah, I think so too. I think if they do pink camo, hopefully it's only a special one-off livery. I hope it's not part of the permanent livery that, again, it was with the blue. Because I agree. I think if it's part of an all-pink livery, I think it could look better. But if it's part of their blue livery, I don't think that's going to look very good.
Yeah.
I'm just not a fan of camouflage, like you said. I'm not a fan of camouflage either. So if they do an all pink camo, I'm just no. That automatically gets a no from me.
So I want to backtrack a little bit and go back to a little bit of McLaren because we've mentioned McLaren a little bit in terms of how they finished last year, where we think they can be in 2024. But I have to say, I really don't. I don't see any reason to doubt that their trajectory at the end of last season will not continue in the future. I think they're going to keep going continuously. They and I think this because at the beginning of the season they were remember if you think back to winter testing, they came out and said that they had picked the wrong development direction. They realized it super late. So they were working continuously to put the car on the right path. They couldn't do it in time for the first couple races. They said Baku, we would probably do it. They had an upgrade in Baku that did really well. Then we're like, if you really like the upgrade in Baku, just wait until Austria. That one blew everybody out of the water. And it's like, oh yeah, Austria, just wait until Silverstone. And then they came in Silverstone.
And they got a podium.
And they were on the podium. And so I think they are in this era of being, first of all, incredibly transparent with where they're at. And so if they're coming out and saying, we're confident in the way that we're doing things and the way things are going right now, you have to believe it, because they were so transparent about being in, having the wrong development direction on a car and having a really poor car at the beginning of the season.
Yeah.
And they were very transparent that, we've put the car on the right path, but it's going to be a couple races. There's a lot of stuff in the pipeline. I just think that I have no reason to doubt that they're not going to pick up exactly where they left off last year in terms of development direction.
I totally agree. And I was going to say something along the lines of McLaren. Well, it left my mind, but I 100% agree. I think McLaren could have a really good season this year. And
just one more thing for McLaren, I think that the driver pairing of Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri is the most exciting pairing on the grid. I think they work really well together. Of course, it'll remain to be seen, if McLaren ends up being a championship challenger. I think, the gloves will come off a little bit more and you'll see a lot more conflict between the two of them. But they work really well together. They've worked really well together the past year to get them to a place where they can be competitive with Red Bull. They're both incredibly quick. I think Oscar Piastri still has a little bit to learn in terms of racecraft and managing a race over full
But he's a
full
very
distance.
good driver.
He's a very good driver. He's an incredible qualifier, and I think right now his partnership with Lando Norris will 100% benefit him. So I am willing to bet that we see a very much improved Oscar Piastri at the beginning of 2024.
I think so too. And McLaren, I know we're talking so much about McLaren. Really, they're the only team to really talk about right now because they just launched their livery. They're the only ones who have done so. But I think Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri and McLaren just as a whole is right now just the most exciting team right now because of how they ended the season. And then both Oscar and Lando, they're young drivers and they're very talented drivers, but they're young, so they got a lot of time left in the grand scheme of things. I mean, you look at Fernando Alonso and Lewis Hamilton, look at when they started. I mean, Fernando Alonso started in Formula One in 2002?
Minardi.
With Minardi, yeah, 2002 with Minardi, and Lewis Hamilton 2007 with McLaren. They've been in for over a decade now, and Fernando over 2 decades, and you see how talented the two of them are and how young they are. It's just it gets you so excited.
Absolutely.
And the last thing I'll mention about McLaren, this is what I forgot. How they went about their social media presence with the livery launch.
Yeah,
very Taylor Swift Reputation era coded, which I think is really excited. And I posted a little clip on our TikTok about it. Why did they surprise us like that? I have so many questions. I'm so intrigued as to why they decided to do that. Why surprise us with the livery? Why now? Why not just say, do what every other team does? Oh, hey, we're launching our car on this date. This is our car launch. Cool, can't wait. I wonder why.
Well, I think the surprise hard launch of their livery, the deleting everything off of their social media, this branding to black, this almost Taylor Swift Reputation era thing that they have going on. And I think it's easy to say, I'm going to go a little pop culture academic study for a second. It's easy to say that sort of thing is very influenced from Taylor Swift. She was really the first high-profile artist, pop culture person to do something like that. Coming back for the Reputation era, deleted everything off the social media, completely changed her vibe, and surprise dropped this thing and came back out of nowhere. And so that sort of thing that you see happening now with artists or entities in pop culture is drawn from that. And you see that now on social media they have all this black branding, they have all this stuff, and I think there's so much excitement right now at the team. Why not? Why not surprise drop the livery? Why not go into this Reputation era, delete everything, completely rebrand, not completely rebrand, but kind of reinvent your social media presence. The other thing too that has happened, it's not going to influence the car that they have at winter testing or the first race. But their wind tunnel that we've been talking about for the past 2 years is now online, and they're currently using it to work on developments for this car. So,
and I remember talking about that at the beginning of the 2022 season. I remember talking about how we would start to see the fruits of their labor in 2024.
Yeah, so it's not going to influence their car this year, but 2025, that car will be a complete and total product of their new wind tunnel and simulator.
And a lot of the upgrades that we see throughout the season, I'm sure, will be influenced by that.
Yeah, so I mean, you ask why, I say why not? You know, there's so much to be excited about at that team.
That's a good point.
And if they are that excited, why not do a bunch of crazy stuff? And the other thing too is it's been a really quiet off season.
It really has.
It's been other than really one thing, which we'll talk about in a minute, and we're not going to spoil. But I think it's been a really quiet off season. Not a lot has happened, so I think it also is just a way to get fans kind of just whet the appetite a little bit and get them ready for the upcoming season, because there's not really been a whole lot to talk about.
Yeah,
and that they are creating something to talk about. So,
which is partly why we decided to release our first episode of the new season now. So obviously they succeeded.
It's getting the people going. It's getting us going. We're excited about
Gets
it.
the people going. It's provocative.
It gets the people going.
What does that even mean?
No one knows what it means, but it's oh my god. Okay. So the next thing, in the spirit of McLaren, we have to. So they hard launched their livery. They are releasing what their car is going to look like. That is going to be on a separate day. That is going to be February 14th, and that takes us into launch season. The first car that we're going to get to take a look at, we're going to go through
two.
It's two. Actually. You get 2 for 1 on the first day of launch season at the moment, which is Sauber and Williams.
On February 5th.
On February 5th.
I'm very intrigued. I think Williams the past two seasons with their car has looked really clean, looked really good. I have a feeling they'll do something similar. I have a feeling the livery will look very similar to what they've done. I'm very intrigued about Sauber.
Yeah.
Because they're no longer Alfa Romeo.
It's Kick Sauber, I think.
Yeah, so Kick Sauber, and the Kick logo is like lime green. So that kind of leads me to believe, are we going to get a lime green car? Are we going to get a green car? Or are we going to get, kind of something along the lines of what Sauber has been in the past, and Kick will just be a side sponsor? I'm very, very intrigued, because I doubt the car will be red, white, or black. Red, white, and or black, because it's no longer Alfa Romeo. So we're not really going to see those colors. So I'm very intrigued. Very intrigued as to what that car is going to look like.
Yeah, it's going to be super weird.
It's going to be interesting. And it's always interesting when you get a team that changes names. And I'll talk about one of the other ones here, but
no, wait, sorry. It's not Kick Sauber. It is the Stake F1 team.
Stake.
It is Stake F1 team.
Stake, that's what it is, not Kick. Stake. But still,
super weird.
Stake, the company, looking at their social media, a lot of the media that they've been putting out with the Stake F1 team, the Formula 1 team, it's, again, the logo, it's all green. Like all of this stuff, it's all green. So I'm wondering if we're going to get like a green and black, or different shades of green and white.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. The Alfa Romeo logo or livery that they had last year, they've been doing for a little bit. I wouldn't be surprised if they keep that same sort of design, but instead of the Alfa Romeo red, it's just green. I think it might be something like that. And then reminder that in 2026, the team does become Audi.
Yes, it will become Audi.
So it is the Stake F1 team,
which I can imagine when it goes to Audi, it'll probably be red, black, and white.
Yeah, something like that,
along those lines.
I do want to talk about Williams though. I don't know that we're going to get a full 2024 spec car. But the thing that I like, and I imagine, you mentioned that, you don't imagine the livery changing a whole lot. I agree with you. I think something that has been in the objective of Williams in the Dorilton Capital era is to have a brand identity on the car. And I don't see that changing at all. I don't see the livery that they have changing at all. I think minor detail, like the McLaren, I think it'll be minor details change, but I think they're going for, all of the cars really are going for a recognizable brand that, you know, you look at that car and you know that is a Williams. You look at that car, you know it's a Ferrari. You look at that car, you know it's a McLaren. And I think in this day and age where, you know, you have almost this franchise model of Formula One, they're looking for these kind of robust, identifiable brands. With that being said, though, it's such a good livery, and I'm really excited about it. It's going to be great. So going ahead, 2 days later will be Alpine on the 7th of February.
Yep.
We've already talked about the pink camo, which I don't know what that's going to be.
I have a lot of question marks surrounding that pink
I think
camo.
it's going to be really interesting. And then then we get into 3 days of
12,
back to
13,
back
14,
to back to back
15.
F1 launches, starting off on the 12th with Aston Martin, and if I might be so bold, I think it's going to be green.
Probably.
I don't know. I think it's going to be green. I think that's a pretty safe bet.
I think that's I don't know. That's a pretty tough one.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's just like Ferrari being red. I don't know. I don't think so. I'm just kidding.
So, you know, the 12th is Aston Martin. The next day, the 13th, is Ferrari, which I imagine that car will be red. It's probably going to look very similar. The 14th, we get a double launch day, which is Mercedes and McLaren. McLaren, because they've already launched their livery, we will likely see some version of the 2024 car, and Mercedes will likely do a 2024 car or something because they usually do, and they usually pair it with an on-track shakedown. So I think the 14th we will likely see 2 cars, like actual competitive 2024 cars. And Ferrari, I think we'll see a 2024 car.
Yeah.
I think, you know...
I have to say, though, with Mercedes, I hope they go back to the silver. I really do. I love the black look of that car, but a lot of the liveries are so dark anyway. I don't know. I
think a silver might pop.
Silver, I think the silver would look so freaking good, and then the white race suit just looks so clean. I hope they go back to silver.
I do too.
Silver Mercedes is just, it's too iconic. It's so iconic.
And it's
so good.
It's one of those things where it's like, you know, when you taste a new food that you really, really like, and you get it over and over and over and over, and it gets to a point where you're like, I can't eat this anymore. It was like me with the chicken wraps at Duke's our freshman year at JMU.
JMU, yeah.
Oh my God, I ate those constantly,
It's
and
like
I
literally-
never ate another one ever again after freshman year.
Yeah, literally almost every single meal we got those chicken wraps or the buffalo bites.
Yes, so never had another one, and I think we're starting to get to that way with the black livery. I think I'm ready for something different, and I think I'm ready for something new. The black, when it released in 2020, was insane. You never thought that Mercedes was going to change from the silver, and then they did, and it was amazing. And the messaging behind it was incredible because it was in conjunction with the Black Lives Matter movement and how vocal Lewis Hamilton has been about racism and racial inequality in the sport. And so that as a statement was really, really powerful. And they had and it just so happened that they had one of the most dominant seasons in Formula One history. And so everybody was like, black, yeah, we're going to stick with it. And then they went to silver in 2022. Things didn't go so well. They went back to black, hoping for this, like, we're going to make it big again. They completely fumbled the bag again. And I think if they just need a hard reset, you know, they're completely redoing the car. Let's go back to silver. Let's go back to the white race suits. I cannot imagine how hot those black race suits are.
Oh, God, I know.
Just, you know, and how hot an all-black car is. That's what I would love to see from Mercedes. Of course, if they do the black and they do it well and they do it creative, it does look good. But you're right. All of the cars are going to black so much because of the carbon fibers. silver might be good, or maybe they do like half silver, half black. Like maybe they do a little bit. I don't know. I think they could get creative with it, and I think. But
there's an idea.
I think whatever they're going to do, I think they're going to do something again that helps to build the brand and the identity, and I think that's what a lot of these liveries are going to be.
I just hope it's silver.
And then after that, the only other team that we have scheduled right now is Red Bull on the 15th. And again, I would be shocked if they changed the livery at all.
Yeah.
It's
I would be surprised if they
that
changed it.
is, in the modern era of F1, that is the most iconic livery. And I think we haven't,
So consistent.
it's like a Vodafone Mercedes or a McLaren, or a Dayglow McLaren, or the Marlboro Ferraris. It's something like that is just so iconic, and it's not going to go anywhere. And of course, I've been saying it for all the teams. I do think that in these car launches, if we look back to 2022, no team was willing to launch their car, what the car actually looked like during launch season.
Yeah.
So, and there was so much secrecy around it. They even had the first testing session of 2022 behind completely closed doors. There was no televised. There was no people allowed there except team personnel and a couple journalists. It was very much behind closed doors. But now, because this is the third year of the current rule cycle. The rule cycle has not changed at all. It's been very consistent.
Yeah.
And I think teams are much more open about their car designs and their design philosophies. I think we're unlike 2022 and some of 2023. I think we're actually, a lot of these teams, I think we're going to actually get a peek at what their 2024 car is going to look
And quite a few teams did that last year. Ferrari unveiled their 2024 car,
or
2023 car last year.
So did Red Bull.
Red Bull, Aston Martin did it.
Mercedes.
I think McLaren did it too. But there are a bunch of teams on their car launches that launched the 2023 car.
Yeah.
So I'm sure we'll get probably a lot of those again this year.
Yeah, and
I think with McLaren, I'm pretty sure the reason why that they're still doing their car launches so that they can launch the 2024 spec of the car. So.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too that the other thing that is important about that is the first race of and the reason why I think that they're all going to just launch their cars, because 2 weeks later, after that launch, they go to Bahrain for testing. After Red Bull's testing and the Red Bull's launch and the first day of testing are like 8 days apart.
Yeah.
So I think we're gonna, they're gonna launch the car. They're gonna pick, add a couple things, change a couple things, or maybe not, and then they're gonna get ready to go to testing. And then the first race of the season is March 2nd.
It seems early.
It is early. So
usually the first race is after my spring break.
Right.
But that's before my spring break.
Yeah, it's the 29th of February to March 2nd is the first weekend.
That's a week
of
before
testing.
my spring break.
Yep. So that's super early, and then you have a double header at Saudi Arabia. You have a week off, and then you have Australia in its usual time slot.
Aren't they going to China this year?
They are, yeah. So this is good. So let's talk about the schedule.
Well, before we talk about the schedule, I just want the last two teams that have yet to launch, Haas and whatever the heck the name of the second Red Bull team is.
Yeah.
I'm just going to call them AlphaTauri because we don't officially know the name of the team yet. We know the website domain, which is Visa Cash App Racing Bulls. That's just the name of their website domain. Don't know the official team name yet, but I'm just going to call them AlphaTauri until we learn otherwise.
Yes.
But because the team is not going to be AlphaTauri, I can imagine that their livery is going to be completely different.
Yeah.
It would be so cool if they went back to like the 2018, 2019, like that chrome blue
yes.
look. That was really sweet.
That was the best livery in that era and that pre-COVID era of F1.
It looked so good.
That is easily my favorite livery in recent
100%.
memory. That chrome royal blue and silver just looked
chef's kiss.
So good.
And then the light
So-
lines of like cherry red in there. Oh,
so
gosh. It looks so
good.
good.
So good.
The other thing too
Jeepers.
with Red Bull though, aren't they starting that partnership with Ford? Or that's for the 2026?
That's
though.
for 2026.
But they have started a partnership, so I wonder if Ford is going to be part of their branding
I don't know.
on the car going into this
We'll
year.
see. Yeah, I'm not really sure.
But
Lots
I can't
of-
imagine Haas will be any different.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Much different.
Yeah. I don't know. And we'll talk about Haas a little bit later. But I mean, let's go over the season because it is drastically different. And I will say, it's one thing that F1 has been, ever since 2020, has been preaching sustainability, and they've had this goal of net carbon neutral by, 2030 or something ridiculous?
2030, yeah.
Which is in 6 years, and I don't think that they're going to achieve that goal. But they have taken steps and they have rearranged the schedule to be a lot more environmentally conscious. And the reason why it's really hard to change around the schedule is because it has to do with the contracts in place with the races. So when a venue sets up a Formula One race, the contract that they sign, a part of that contract, that multi-year contract that they sign, determines a specific weekend, and that weekend is based on the amount of money that they're willing to pay F1. So, for example, Abu Dhabi pays a lot of money to have them as the last race of the season, and now Bahrain is paying more money than the Australian Grand Prix to have them as the first race of the season. So it all has to do with the amount of money that they're willing to put in and the contracts in which they draw up. So changing around the schedule requires a lot of contract renegotiations. But they've done a lot of that. They've done a little bit of reworking the schedule, and I think it's going to be a little bit easier on the drivers. Not totally better, but I think it is going to be a little bit better. So let's get into it. 21st to 23rd of February is testing in Bahrain. Then 1 week later, they have the Bahrain Grand Prix. Then they go to Saudi Arabia. They stay on that side of the world. They go to Australia, and then they have a week off. They go to Japan. So Japan is
Japan's early in the
Japan
season
is
this year.
taking an April time slot instead of their usual October time slot. And I think part of that is to create a little bit ease of the regional traveling because they go to Australia, to Japan, to China.
To China. I'm glad China's back on that because that's one of the races. I think it's such an iconic track.
Yes.
And nowadays when they're adding so many street circuits to Formula One
It's
that
good to
I
go back
freaking
to-
hate. It's good to see another track
So,
like that.
The other thing about Japan is they're now not going during typhoon season, which has the rain that they've experienced the past few years. And remember, in 2019, qualifying had to be moved to Sunday morning because a typhoon came through on Saturday.
Yeah.
So that is a little bit better. We're going back to China, given that they, if it doesn't get canceled again, they've been trying to go back to China ever since 2021. Then they go to, then it gets a little bit tricky because then they cross the Pacific Ocean, they go to the United States, and then they go all the way back to Europe to start the European season. But they go Emilia-Romagna at Imola, Monaco, then they cross the Atlantic again to go to Canada. But again, the spot of the Canadian Grand Prix, that is always
Pretty
held.
much unchanged.
It's pretty much unchanged, and that's held because of their contract and the bidding that they do to have that time slot. So then they go back to Canada, and then it starts a whole run of European races. And this is pretty much unchanged from last year. Spain, Austria, Great Britain, Hungary, Belgium. Then they take their break. They go to the Netherlands. They go to Italy. Then this is a little bit different. Azerbaijan moves to the end of the season in September. And then that's the last leg of the European season is Azerbaijan. Then they do Singapore. Then they do the United States. Then
Texas.
they do their usual USA, Mexico, Brazil. Then they go back to the States for Las Vegas, and then they end the season in the Middle East with Qatar and Abu Dhabi. So the big late spring, beginning of summer is a lot of crossing oceans on different weekends, but I think the beginning of the
There's a
season,
lot of time in between those races, though.
yeah, the beginning of the season is going to be really nice, and and the summer is always good because you have that European summer, and then they end the season all doing all of the latter North and South American races in one go, and then they go back to the Middle East for the final two races.
This year we won't have 4 weeks in between. Saudi Arabia and Australia?
Yes.
It's only 2 weeks.
Right, because now we have the Chinese Grand Prix. That month long span was because they had canceled the Chinese Grand Prix once again. Mm-hmm. So that is a look at our 2024 season, and
it's going to be exciting.
I'm super excited that we're going back to China again.
I like that track a lot.
I love that track. It's an iconic track.
Produces some good racing too.
And it's going to be great having a full-time Chinese driver on the grid at the Chinese Grand Prix. That's going to be super exciting. I think that's going to be a huge weekend for Zhou Guanyu. The Chinese fans are always incredible.
They're very passionate.
Super passionate, super energetic. The Chinese and the Japanese fans go all out for F1, and I think having a Chinese driver on the grid is going to be incredible for the sport. And I'm really excited.
I won't be 100% happy with the schedule until they get Sepang back on there.
Yeah.
And I don't think that'll ever happen.
Sepang and a race in Germany.
Yeah.
Do it, F1. You have the ability. Please. For the love of God.
We hate street circuits.
Yes. This is a minor soapbox that we'll probably talk about every time there's a street circuit on the calendar. And now they're even talking about doing a street circuit through Madrid. I'm just like,
have you seen the city layout for Madrid?
Oh, well,
there's no way you can put a Formula One street circuit in Madrid.
Just stop.
Look at the street layout.
Well, and we had this conversation back when they were planning the Las Vegas Grand Prix and the Miami Grand Prix. There are so many permanent road courses in the U.S. to go to instead of just...
Who would be willing to make the necessary upgrades to become FIA Grade 1?
Oh, we've had this conversation. We can keep going on this, but instead of doing a street circuit in Madrid, go back to the Nürburgring or Hockenheim or Sepang or literally anywhere else. Literally anywhere but doing a street circuit.
God. I know. Yeah. All right.
Anyway,
the next thing that we're going to talk about, there's no really segue into this, but the biggest news I think that we've had from the off season, which has been really weirdly quiet.
The only piece of news.
So the only piece of big news that we've had up until McLaren launched their livery is Günther Steiner is out at Haas, which. I'm sad. I love Günther Steiner as a personality. Mm-hmm. I love him as a personality. Mm-hmm. And that clip that we got at the beginning of one of the episodes in, I think it was 2022 season for Drive to Survive, of him and Mattia Binotto driving through the Italian countryside.
Awesome.
Just such a great character, a great person. I don't think he was a very good team principal.
No, I think he was...
So I think this is a good decision.
He was the team principal that team needed to get started.
Uh-huh.
But and honestly, you can... And so they're being replaced by Ayo Komatsu, who was...
He was one of the race engineers.
He's one of the race engineers, he was on Grosjean's pit wall when Grosjean was racing for Haas. I think he's the most senior person at that team. He's been with the team for a very long time. I think that's a great replacement. I don't think they're going to... I never thought that they were going to be able to find anybody outside of the Haas organization to run that team, just because all of the other people are taken up. All of the other teams have their people. But I think he's been at the team for a long time. I think he's going to do a great job. I just don't think that team... And my worrisome thing about Haas is not... that Günther Steiner is out and Komatsu is in, the team principal is changing. The most worrying thing that I saw that came from all of this is the fact that Gene Haas came out with a statement that said Haas don't need any more help financially. They just need to figure it out. And I think that is completely incorrect. I think they do need more financial help, and Gene needs to have more investment.
Yeah.
It's very clear that he does not care about that F1 team, and I think he should sell. Sell
I
that
agree.
team. He's not
He should sell, or he should be willing to put in the amount of money and effort into the Formula One team as he does in the NASCAR team, because his NASCAR team is very successful.
and it's a race winning team.
The Stewart
it's a championship contending team.
The Stewart Haas NASCAR Cup team is a contender to win every single race. It's a contender for the championship. They always have a driver in the playoffs.
They always have
year.
a driver in the playoffs, and their drivers in the NASCAR team over the past few years. I mean, they've had people like Kevin Harvick and Clint Bowyer on that team. Like, it's a really good
Legendary drivers.
legendary drivers with legendary status, and I cannot for the life of me figure out why they can't put that same amount of investment into that F1 team. And if he's
Because it's not like the Haas organization and Gene Haas himself is short on cash.
right. Like, so, and this got a lot of traction on social media. I saw a lot of questions about, should Andretti approach to purchase Haas? I think that's a great move.
Yeah, because
It keeps-
wasn't Andretti and Cadillac, wasn't their bid accepted?
their bid was approved by the FIA,
Yeah,
but
by the
Formula
FIA.
One and the
Liberty Media.
and Liberty Media and the other teams still have to approve it, and that has not happened yet.
Yeah.
And at this point, I don't think it will. I genuinely don't think that. I think the only way for the Andretti name to get on the grid is if they purchase an existing team, and the only team that I think that they could do that is if they purchase Haas. And I think they should. I think Gene Haas should sell. Put in an owner that is not only willing to put in the investment, but is willing to work to get that team up the grid.
Which Andretti clearly has demonstrated that he wants to do that.
He has race winning operations in endurance racing, in Formula E, in IndyCar. I wouldn't be surprised if he was targeting NASCAR at some point. His grandson Marco Andretti is competing in the Craftsman Truck Series. Like, it's a very big name and racing family, and they have the resources to be able to do have a lot of success. I think that Gene Haas, if he's not willing to put in the extra investment or doesn't think that Haas needs that money, he needs to sell. I think the person that you sell it to is Michael Andretti. It keeps the team in America, and I just think that that's the right thing to do. And I think the Haas is going to continue to be a bottom feeder F1 team as long as Gene Haas refuses to put in the investment. I think it is necessary to put in. I think, it just, they're kind of, right now, they're kind of like the Oakland A's of Formula One. Sell the team, get rid of it. Let's do something else for a change.
The Carolina Panthers.
Yeah. So that's the biggest thing. And going back to the team principal thing, I think Komatsu is going to do a great job. I just don't think that changing the team principal is the answer.
No.
I think getting rid of Günther Steiner
Or
is
the
not,
only answer. I think it's a very, very small part of the much larger scientific equation.
They're trying to treat the symptoms. They're not treating the actual cause of the problem, which is lack of investment and lack of motivation from the ownership. And I think,
looking at Eugene,
I think they need to make that change, and I think Andretti purchasing that team would be awesome.
I would agree. Well, the last thing that we'll talk about, speaking of team principals changing over, there are, we did the math before we started this episode, 75%, that's 15 drivers, 75% of the grid is out of a contract at the end of this year. We could potentially have on hand, and I made a video clip about this, we could potentially have on hand one of the most insane silly seasons of all time. Now, it also could be just a lot of drivers just sign contract extensions.
Re-signings. I think there are some shoo-ins that will re-sign contracts, but I also think there are going to be some key players
some big ones.
Some key players that I think are going to really shake things up. So let's just go through the drivers right now, and we're going to do this by team. So with Red Bull, Sergio Perez is out of contract. Max Verstappen, 2028. I think he's going to retire at Red Bull.
Yeah, I don't think Max will leave until he retires.
Then nobody at Mercedes. They're both on until 2025. Ferrari is both Leclerc and Sainz. Both drivers.
I think they'll re-sign him.
Yeah, I think
the only negotiation that could be is how long they're signed for.
Yeah.
I think Ferrari has said that Charles Leclerc is their boy, and they want to have someone to partner him. I think if Carlos Sainz has a super large downturn in form this year, which I don't see happening,
No.
considering honestly Carlos was in most points of the season better than Charles.
And
I think they'll be
he
signed.
was always the person that was able to pick up points when Charles had an off weekend. He is that person for Ferrari, and I think the contract negotiations that they're having right now is, I think Charles is likely hesitant to sign a really big Verstappen style extension because I don't think he wants to win a world championship, and I would be shocked if he is 100% convinced that they can do that at this moment. And I think it's going to be a wait and see for him. And I know Carlos Sainz wants a 2 or 3 year deal, and I think Ferrari wants a 1 year deal with a 1 year option. I think that's the hiccup right now that they're having with those extensions.
Yeah.
Both McLaren drivers are signed on,
Yep.
so we don't have to worry about that. Alonso is out of contract in 2024. Lance Stroll technically is out of contract, but he's on a rolling 1 year contract basis based on his dad being ownership of the team.
Yeah, which because his dad is the owner of the team, I think he'll be signed again. It's a safe, dumb but safe option.
Yeah,
I just think they need to get rid of Lance Stroll.
I truly think the only way that we're not going to see Lance Stroll at his father's team is if he no longer competes in F1. I truly think that the only way that we're not going to see him at Aston Martin or whatever team,
or for whatever reason Lawrence doesn't want to be at Aston Martin anymore.
If Lawrence ends up buying Haas for some freaking reason, I don't know, then Lance Stroll will be a Haas F1 driver. But I don't. The only way that I see Lance Stroll not being on the grid is if he just no longer does F1. Alonso, I truly have no idea, and I think it's going to be based on the performance of the team this year and whether or not he wants to retire. Both Alpine drivers, Ocon and Gasly, are up for contract renegotiations at Alpine. I don't think that they end up. I think they both end up staying because I don't think that either of them have anywhere to go.
Yeah,
I don't,
and I can't think of anyone who could replace them.
Yeah, I don't know of anybody that would replace them. I think Alpine will very much want to have both of those drivers back. It's good for them. It's a French brand with all French lineup.
Yeah,
I think Pierre and Esteban might be less keen to work together as teammates, but I don't see them going anywhere. Both Williams drivers are up for contract. Both Albon and Sargent are out of contract at Williams. I think the only place Sargent goes is either he stays at Williams or he's no longer on the F1 grid, unless somehow he pulls a worldie and just can match Verstappen, or sorry, not Verstappen, match Albon. This season Alex Albon is the only reason why they were 7th in Williams, and I think if they don't extend Logan Sargent, he's not going to be in F1 next year. I'll come back to Alex Albon, but both Alfa Romeo or stake F1 drivers, Bottas and Zhou, are out of F1. Again, I think Zhou will definitely be re-signed because of the Chinese influence. Both AlphaTauri drivers, Tsunoda and Ricciardo, are out of contract, and both Haas drivers are out of contract as well. Yeah. So right now, I think it's entirely too early to say, and I think it's going to be dependent on a couple things, but there are definitely some key players that I think will shake up silly season, will have a big influence on what happens.
The only two question marks that I have over the grid, like you said, the only two question marks that I have is Fernando going to stay at Aston Martin? And I think if they have a convincing start to the season like they did last year, I think then he will stay. But he is getting up there in age.
I think
he
if
could
they
retire.
I think if they start this season and the same form that they had at the end of last season, I think 2024 will be his last season in F1. I think he'll retire.
Yeah.
But if they have the start that they did last year and they come out and, you know, it's a potential Red Bull beater, I think he's going to be willing to stay on for the long term, because he's still, even at his old age, he's like, what, 38? I don't know. I don't actually know how old he is. But even at his age, he wants to win and he wants to be competitive. And if Aston Martin can win, he's going to want to stay there.
The only other question I have about the big question, this could really, really potentially shake up the grid, is Sergio Perez. Mm-hmm. How is he going to perform this season?
Yeah.
That's my question, because if he brings it up another notch and he's able to, you know, compete right alongside Max Verstappen, or the gap between him and Max is a lot closer, I think he'll stay on. Mm-hmm. But if he, you know, if he's not able to meet those expectations, we could see a really, really huge shakeup in the grid.
Yeah.
Who's going to replace him? I think the most likely bet, if he were to get replaced, I think the most likely bet would be Daniel Ricciardo is put back in Red Bull, and then Liam Lawson take his position at AlphaTauri. I don't know where Sergio Perez could go. That could be really interesting as to where Sergio Perez, because he's too good not to be in Formula One.
Yeah,
he is too good not to be in Formula One.
Mm-hmm. And but, I think if I am Red Bull, I don't re-sign Perez. I promote Daniel Ricciardo. I get Liam Lawson in at AlphaTauri or whatever that team becomes, because Max Verstappen is on until 2028, but you'd be a fool to think that is a 100% guarantee, because Max Verstappen has said time and time again that if he no longer feels like he can win in F1, he will retire. Or if he feels that F1 is becoming too gimmicky with all of the sprint races, racing until 2028, I do not think is a 100% guarantee for Max Verstappen. And so I think if I'm Red Bull, I think especially with these new rules regulations coming up in 2026, I think you need to be thinking now about who you're going to put in that team after Max Verstappen.
Yeah.
And I think the answer could potentially be Liam Lawson.
Yeah.
I think you need him, give him a chance. I mean, he's the reserve driver this year, which I think is a great get. I think you're going to get a chance to really evaluate him. I think if Sergio Perez doesn't pan out, you put Daniel Ricciardo in the senior team. You know he can perform. You know he knows the car really well. He works great with Max Verstappen. You get Liam Lawson in at AlphaTauri. Give him a year in 2025, and then, you know, if 2026 doesn't pan out, there's your replacement for Max Verstappen.
Because there is a huge engine power unit shakeup.
Well, power unit and the technical rules. They're making the cars smaller. They're making them lighter.
That's right.
They're completely changing the dimensions of the car too. So you know, who knows what's going to happen. So I think you're right. Alonso is going to be a key piece. I think Sergio Perez is going to be a key piece. And I have to tell you that I think the hottest commodity on the grid during the silly season is going to be Alex Albon.
You think so?
I 100% think so. The way that he performed last year in Williams, I have no reason to believe that he's not going to continue his form. I think he's going to continue to be great for that team. I think being out of the Red Bull system has given him a lot of confidence, and I think if he puts on a campaign in 2024 like he did last year, I think he is going to be an ultra hot commodity on the drivers market. And I think if Stroll or Alonso leave Aston Martin, I think they're going to be the first people to pick him up.
And, you know, the other thing, too, with Alex, I saw an interview recently when they were asking him about his experience at Red Bull. And I think the interview happened a while ago. But he mentioned the gap between him and Max and Checo and Max, and how actually, you know, Alex Albon on average was only a couple tenths off of Max, but that season 2019, that Red Bull car, the best it could do was, you know, third, fourth, fifth, sometimes even sixth. That's like the best that car could do. And if you're a couple tenths off, he said that's ninth or 10th.
Right.
But
if you're a couple tenths off,
but you know, with Max consistently winning a couple tenths off, that's what, third, fourth, fifth, which is where Checo has been finishing.
Yeah, and he finished. Yeah, I mean, with the car that they had at the beginning of the season, a couple tenths off was second place.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when in 2019 and 2020, a couple tenths off for Alex Albon, and you know, same thing with Pierre Gasly, a couple tenths off is, you know, you're fighting to stay in the points.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so, and I think on average, the gap between Checo and Verstappen is bigger than that of Albon and Verstappen.
Mm-hmm.
But I think too, the other thing is, the good thing with Alex Albon is getting out of that Red Bull system, not just because of the people there, but the car, the way that it's set up for Max. You know, I know he's been very open about how much more confidence he has, and you can see it when he races, the moves that he makes. You can see that he just has so much more confidence. And I think outside of the Red Bull family, I think he is going to be one of the hottest commodities on the grid.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, I truly believe that.
I agree.
You know, and then the other thing is if you know, Albon does move up to Aston Martin or somewhere else, and you know, the Williams ends up dumping Logan Sargent, then you have opportunities for, you know, some lateral moves for like Kevin Magnussen or Nico Hulkenberg, or you have opportunities for Mick Schumacher to get back on the grid.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because he, you know, being the reserve driver for Mercedes, Toto Wolff has been a huge advocate for Mick Schumacher, and we've seen Mercedes development drivers go on and be incredibly successful after their time there. I mean, just look at Esteban Ocon.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he came back, and you know, he had a great season.
Mm-hmm.
And he's been great for Alpine or Renault or whatever the team has been.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they would be a fool to not look at somebody like Mick Schumacher. So it'll be super interesting. We could do a whole episode on where we think, and actually we are going to do that at some point during this off season.
Mm-hmm.
But starting now, at least in the off season, we're going to be trying to do these episodes somewhat weekly, and during the season, this will be a weekly fixture for your F1 content.
Yeah.
Listening needs.
Now that our day jobs are
we actually
more cohesive,
are actually aligned. So, So thanks for listening. Please be sure to let us know in the comments who you think is going to be the hottest commodity for the 2024 silly season. Any predictions there? Let us know who you think is going to have the best looking livery, and let us know who you think is best poised to be a Red Bull beater in the 2024 season. And once you do that, please make sure to like and subscribe, hit the notification bell, so every time we release an episode, you're the first to know. Take a listen to us, follow us anywhere you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anything like that. Be sure to give us a listen, and we will see you next time.
Peace.